The coffee was still hot when my son-in-law called. I remember that detail because I'd just poured it. Second cup of the morning, which for me means it was already past 9. I sleep later than I used to. One of the few privileges of being 63 and retired. My wife was at her book club. She'd left 40 minutes earlier, kissed me on the cheek, told me not to eat the leftover butter tarts because she was saving them for Sunday. I told her I wouldn't. I ate one anyway, standing over the sink. Then my son-in-law called, and everything I thought I knew about that morning, about that week, about the last several months started to come apart at the seams. "Is Barbara with you?" he asked. I told him no. She'd gone to her book club. The one she's been attending every second Thursday for. I had to think about it. Maybe 4 years now? Held at a community center on the east side of Barrie. I dropped her off there once, early on. Watched her walk in with a canvas bag full of paperbacks. There was a pause on the line. "Dad," he said. And he never calls me that. He calls me by my first name, has since the beginning. He's a good man, my son-in-law. Steady. Not the type to be dramatic. "What's going on?" I said. "I'm at the Pearson Marriott," he said, "for the Hargrove conference. I just walked into the lobby restaurant, and I'm looking at a woman who looks exactly like Barbara. She's sitting with a man I don't recognize. They're not just colleagues having lunch, Dad. I can tell." I put my coffee down. I want to explain something about my wife and me. We met in 1987 at a Canada Day barbecue in Sudbury. She was wearing a yellow sundress and arguing with someone about Pierre Trudeau. I fell in love with her in the middle of that argument. We've been married 31 years. We have a daughter, 2 grandchildren, a house that's too big for us now that everyone's moved out. We argue about the thermostat and what to watch after dinner. We are, as far as I knew, fine. Not passionate, maybe. Not the way we were at the start. But fine. Comfortable. The kind of marriage you build over 3 decades of choosing each other every single morning, even when the mornings are boring. "You're sure it's her?" I asked. "She's wearing the burgundy coat," he said. "The one your daughter gave her for Christmas 2 years ago." I sat down. "The burgundy coat. I know that coat. I've my wife button it in our front hallway 100 times. "Don't approach her," I said. I don't know why I said it. Something instinctive. "Just don't say anything yet." He said okay. He sounded relieved not to have to. I sat in my kitchen for a long time after we hung up. Long enough for my coffee to go cold. Long enough to watch 2 squirrels chase each other through the backyard. Long enough to feel the particular way that certainty, when it starts to go, doesn't go all at once. It goes in pieces quietly, like ice on a spring lake. My wife was not at her book club. The first thing I did, and I'm not proud of this, but I'm telling it honestly, was go upstairs and look through her desk. I know her passwords. She's written them in a small notebook she keeps in the top left drawer because she can never remember them. I've teased her about it. It's the kind of thing spouses know. I opened her email. I don't know what I was expecting to find. Something obvious. An incriminating thread, a hotel booking, something with his name on it. What I found instead was almost nothing. A handful of emails from an address I didn't recognize. Just a Gmail account, first name, a string of numbers. But the emails themselves had been deleted. All of them. I could see them in the trash folder, emptied within the last week. She'd been careful. That was the thing that landed hardest in those first few hours. Not the betrayal itself. I hadn't fully absorbed that yet. It was the care. The deliberateness. The fact that she had thought about it, planned around it, covered her tracks. That doesn't happen once. That's a habit. I made myself lunch I didn't eat. I sat at the kitchen table and tried to think clearly. She came home at 3:15, same as she always does on book club Thursdays. I heard the door, heard her take off her boots, heard the coat go on the hook, the burgundy one. "How was it?" I called. "Good," she said. "Sandra picked this month's book. Very literary. Not really my thing, but I'm trying to stay open-minded. Sandra." I filed that away. She came into the kitchen and poured herself a glass of water and stood at the counter, scrolling through her phone. I watched her. I have spent 31 years watching this woman. The way she holds her glass. The way she pushes her reading glasses up when she's concentrating. I watched her and tried to find something different in her and couldn't, and that frightened me more than finding something would have. "How was your day?" she asked. "Quiet," I said. "Ate one of the butter tarts, sorry." She laughed. "I knew you would." She went upstairs to change. I stayed at the table. Over the next 2 weeks I watched. I became, in some sense, an observer in my own marriage. I paid attention to the way she used her phone. Always face down on the table now. Something I hadn't noticed before, but suddenly couldn't stop noticing. She'd started taking slightly longer at the grocery store. Her book club moved from every second Thursday to every Thursday. And she mentioned it so casually that I almost didn't catch it. Almost. I didn't confront her. I want to explain why, because I know how it sounds. The truth is, I needed to understand what I was dealing with before I said anything. My wife she's sharp. She's always been sharper than me in arguments. If I came at her half prepared, she would dismantle whatever I'd assembled, and I'd spend the next week feeling like I'd imagined everything. I've seen it happen. 40 years ago, I would have done it differently. At 63, I know my own weaknesses, so I watched, and I kept a small notebook of my own. My son-in-law, to his considerable credit, said nothing to my daughter. He checked in with me twice that first week and let me lead. He's an accountant, my son-in-law. Methodical. I've always respected that about him, and I respected it more that month than I ever had before. What I pieced together over those 2 weeks, the book club met every second Thursday. My wife had been saying it met every Thursday for at least 3 months. That's 6 extra Thursday afternoons, unaccounted for. She'd made 2 cash withdrawals of $800 each from our joint savings account in November. She'd made one for $600 in October. I'd signed off on these accounts for years without looking closely. Retired couples do that, I think. You establish trust and then you stop auditing it, which is perhaps exactly what someone patient and careful would count on. She'd had her hair done differently in September. I'd complimented her on it. She'd said it was just a trim. I believed her because I had no reason not to. I am 63 years old. I spent 35 years as a civil engineer. I built my career on looking at structures and understanding where the load was being carried, where the stress points were, what a thing could hold before it couldn't hold anymore. I applied that the same way I'd apply it to anything else. The structure had been under stress for longer than I'd known. On a Saturday afternoon in the 3rd week, when my wife was supposedly at her sister's place in Aurelia for the weekend, a visit that had come up suddenly, which her sister later confirmed with a level of enthusiasm that felt slightly rehearsed. I drove to the Pearson Marriott. My son-in-law had texted me the name of the hotel restaurant where he'd seen her. I sat at the bar with a ginger ale and waited. I don't know what I expected. I don't know what I was hoping for. What I found was something I hadn't anticipated. 40 minutes after I arrived, my wife walked in. She was wearing the gray blazer she usually saves for dinner parties. She was laughing at something. And beside her was a man I didn't recognize. Late 50s, maybe 60, silver-haired, the kind of comfortable posture that speaks of old money or very long success. They sat at a corner table. Close, but not overtly so. Careful, I watched them for 20 minutes. Then I paid for my ginger ale and left. On the drive home on the 400, I called my daughter. I should say something about my daughter. She's 34, lives in Newmarket with her husband and my 2 grandchildren. She is, in most ways, her mother's daughter. Quick, perceptive, not easily rattled. She's also mine, which means she doesn't say more than she needs to. When I told her what had been happening, the book club, the cash withdrawals, the hotel, she was quiet for a long time. "How long have you known?" she asked. "About 3 weeks," I said. "And you didn't tell me." "I didn't want to upset you until I was certain." Another silence then. "What are you going to do?" I told her I wasn't sure yet. "Dad," she said, "are you okay?" It was the first time anyone had asked me that. I found I didn't have an easy answer. I went home. I made dinner. My wife called from Aurelia at 7 o'clock to say she was having a lovely time and would be back Sunday afternoon. I said that was great. I told her to say hello to her sister. She said she would. I sat in the living room after we hung up and looked at the CBC News on mute for about an hour, not seeing any of it. I want to be honest about what that period of time felt like, because I've since read that other people in similar situations talk about rage or devastation, and I felt those things. But what I felt most was a strange, persistent disorientation. Like coming home to a house you've lived in for decades and finding one room you don't recognize. Not a dramatic discovery, just a door you'd never noticed, opening onto somewhere you've never been. When she came home Sunday, I had made a decision. I waited until after dinner. The dishes were done. We were in the living room. She had a cup of tea. I had nothing. She was talking about her sister's new dog. Something small, she said, ridiculous looking. And I let her finish the story. Then I asked her who he was. She went very still. I've known my wife for 36 years. I know her still. What are you talking about? She said. Her voice was calm. She's always been good at calm. I told her about my son-in-law's phone call. I told her about the hotel. I told her I'd been there myself 3 weeks later, that I'd sat at the bar and watched them together for 20 minutes. I told her about the cash. I told her I'd counted 6 Thursdays. I kept my voice even. I'd had 3 weeks to prepare. She didn't deny it. That was almost the worst part. I'd been preparing for denial. I'd been ready for her to tell me I was wrong, that I'd built a case out of coincidences, that I'd let my son-in-law's mistake set off some kind of paranoid spiral. I had my evidence arranged in my head like a closing argument. Instead, she put down her tea and looked at the window and said, "How long have you known?" Same questions as my daughter. Different meaning. His name, it turned out, was someone she'd met at a professional development conference in Ottawa the previous spring. She'd been attending a 3-day seminar on nonprofit governance. She volunteers as a board member for 2 local organizations, has done for years. Respectable work. Good work. She met him at dinner on the second night, and somewhere in the months that followed, it became something else. She said she hadn't planned it. I told her I understood that it wasn't planned. I told her that what I couldn't get past wasn't the feeling. I'm 63. I understand that feelings happen. It was the Thursday afternoons. It was the cash. It was the deleted emails. It was the story about Sandra's literary novel. It was the accumulated weight of all the small, practiced lies, stacked up over months like load-bearing walls, designed to keep me standing in a house I thought I lived in. You built something, I told her. You built it carefully, and you maintained it, and you thought about what I'd notice and what I wouldn't. That's not a feeling. That's a decision, she cried. I don't say that to be cruel. I say it because it was real, and it mattered, and I want to report this the way it actually happened. I slept in the spare room that night. I lay in the dark on my daughter's old bed, which still has the faint dent from the years she slept there, and I stared at the ceiling. At some point I must have fallen asleep, because I woke up at 5:30 to birds and gray light and the sound of my wife moving quietly in the kitchen downstairs. The same sounds as every other morning. That's the part that stays with you. In the weeks that followed, we went to a counselor. A woman in Barrie, office on Dunlop, 2nd floor, a ficus in the corner and the faint smell of coffee. I found her straightforward, and I think, genuinely useful. Whether the marriage survived was never entirely clear to me in those early sessions. We were both still too close to the event, like trying to assess structural damage from inside the building. We're still working on it. I want to be honest about that. I don't have a clean ending for you. There are people, I think, who expect these stories to conclude with either reconciliation or separation, neatly wrapped. Ours hasn't done either yet. Some mornings I sit across from her at breakfast, and I feel something close to what we had before. And some mornings I feel like I'm sitting across from someone who shares my house, and 31 years, and a very particular kind of secret knowledge. And those aren't the same things, and I can't always tell which morning it's going to be until I'm already in it. What I know is this: the structure was compromised. That doesn't mean it can't be rebuilt. It means you have to decide whether rebuilding it is what you want, and what the new structure is going to be designed to hold, and whether both of you are willing to do the work. I spent 35 years understanding how things bear weight. I'm still working on what that means when the thing in question is a marriage, and when the man doing the assessment is 63, and when the coffee on the counter in the morning is still hot before anything has had the chance to change it. Some mornings I pour it and stand at the window and wait to see which morning it's going to be.